7 key leadership qualities. These are the qualities in 3,300 years of analyzing leaders, going back to 600 BC, where they analyzed the leadership qualities of Cyrus the Great of Persia, and all the way through to Jack Welch and top business leaders like Steve Jobs in the current day. They find that they all have 7 qualities in common. And these qualities are all learnable qualities, and you learn them by practice. And here's what we found. We say whatever you dwell upon or think about grows in your mentality. If you put water and sunshine on a seed, it grows in the soil. If you think about these qualities, you start to develop the qualities. Number 1, the most important quality is vision. Number 1, leaders have vision. Leaders have a clear picture of the future.
Imagine you could be a world leader. And then you ask the question, well, if I was the world leader in my field, how would I be different from today? How would my company be different from today? Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started out in a garage with an idea to put together pieces and make a little Apple computer that people could have at home. Bill Gates of Microsoft started off with this idea that if they could make it usable, you could have a PC on every desktop. Everyone's heard about that. That was his vision, a PC on every desktop in the world. When he said this in the late 70s, everybody said he must be crazy. The heads of the IBM were saying, there's no reason for anyone to have a computer at home. There's no reason for anyone to have a personal computer. And within a couple of years, they were literally avalanched out of the business because you find that everybody wanted a personal computer. The question was the technology to build it and the programs to operate. Today, if you don't have a computer, you're living in the Stone Ages. People, your telephone is a computer. You have an iPad, you have a computer at home, you have a... So you start thinking of, if your business was world class, if you were world class, how would you be different from today? And then here's the key. This is the key. The first step is always the hardest step because it forces you, like a chick breaking out of an egg when it hatches, the first step forces you to break out of your comfort zone. And the comfort zone is so strong that probably 90% of people are held back from their full potential all their life because of this vice-like comfort zone. And when you take the first step, the only way you can do it is break out. And suddenly you see the second step and the third step and the fourth step. And then as you take the steps, your self-esteem goes up and your self-confidence goes up and you become more creative and you start to think of all kinds of ideas and people say, what has gotten into you? What are you smoking? Because whatever it is, you should share it with the others. And so this is the difference between top people, is they have a big idea of what's possible and they take the first step.
They all went there. And my point is that if you have a clear vision, now everything becomes organized. And imagine that there's no limitations. Imagine that you have all the talents and all the skills that you need, which you do. The average person has more potential than they could use in 100 lifetimes. So you have lots of potential. You can learn any skill. You can accomplish any goal as long as you're clear about it and you're willing to work. So imagine that you have all the friends and all the contacts and all the knowledge and all the skills. If you had no limitations, what would be your perfect vision for your future? Your perfect vision for your home, for your family, for your marriage? What would be your perfect vision for your career and for your income? What would be your perfect vision? And then the only question you ask is the question, how? How do I achieve it? How is the question of top people. How do I achieve my goals? What are the next steps? What is my next action? What would have to happen? And then you take a pen and you think on paper. You describe it on paper. Because what we've discovered is 2 things. If you cannot write it down, you cannot achieve it. If you cannot write it down, you don't know what it is. You're unclear, fuzzy. It's almost like you're driving in the fog or at dark night with no lights. But when you write it down, it starts to become clearer and clearer. And there's a direct relationship between how clear your ideal future is on paper and how fast you create it. The secret says that if you're very clear about what you want in your mind, you start to attract it into your life. You may not even know clearly where you're going to achieve it. All you have to do is be clear about what you want. And that's what we say, what do you want? If your life was perfect in the future, what would it look like? Write it down, write it down, write it down. That's all you need to do, and the universe will bring it to you. And I can tell you stories that are phenomenal of people who were clear about what they wanted, but they didn't know how it was going to come about. But they were clear about what they wanted. Then you come back to the present today, Now you're clear about your future vision, and then you say, what would have to happen starting today for me to get there? And what would be the first step? Now this is the difference between winners and losers in every field. Winners take the first step with no guarantee of success. Which brings us to the second quality, and the second quality is courage. And in these 3,300 studies, they found the two qualities that every single leader had in common was vision, an exciting picture of the future that they wanted to create, and courage, which was the courage to take action on the vision with no guarantees. Remember, just simply taking action, taking the first step with no guarantees is the mark of the leader. Nothing worthwhile in life is possible without taking a risk, and the risk is that it won't work. Move out of the comfort zone. The biggest single limitation on success in work today is the comfort zone. People become comfortable doing things a certain way and they don't want to change. Most business models are obsolete, maybe 80%. You could see this, by the way, with radio, television, newspaper. Many of the big industries, they become obsolete. What happened with BlackBerry and Nokia? Apple came into the market with the iPhone and made their business models obsolete. They made Apple the most valuable company in the history of the world. Why? It's because they had a new business model. But the wonderful thing about business model innovation is that it's a skill. And what do we know about all business skills? They're all learnable. You can learn, but you've got to get out of your comfort zone. You've got to stop defending the old way. This is the hardest thing for all companies. Biggest single obstacle is that people won't change because they're so comfortable doing it the old way. So, third quality of leadership worldwide is integrity. And integrity means that leaders are honest and trustworthy. Is that people trust them. It's impossible to follow someone if you don't believe them, if you don't believe that what they say is true. And the biggest mistake that leaders can make is to make a promise and not keep the promise, or to say that they will do something and then not do it. So, integrity is considered the most important skill. In fact, it even comes before leadership, vision, and courage. So it's really important, if you're a leader and you have a reputation for not telling the truth, you will soon be pushed aside and everybody will know who you are, and then you will be finished. I worked for a man many years ago, and I sat in his office and I watched him do something, and I never forgot. This man started off, he was a doctor, and he earned good money, and he began making small investments after hours. Eventually he worked in a large hospital, and he would meet with business people in his office in the hospital, and he would invest his extra money in small investments, and then bigger investments, and then bigger investments. This man had an incredible character. Everyone who knew him knew that he was one of the most honest men in the world. He owned 200 companies. He asked me one day to put together a business proposal, so I put together this proposal, I gave it to him, and he sent it over to the bank. On the phone, the bank agreed to lend him $50 million for a new project. He could borrow $50 million on a phone call and on his word, because everybody trusted him. That's the most important thing in banking, is to make a safe loan, a loan that they know will be paid back in full with interest. So number 4 is responsibility. Leaders do not criticize or complain. When you criticize anything or anyone, you actually weaken yourself. And when you become weak, you become little. You see, when you criticize other people, you are saying, I'm a victim. I am a victim. I am a victim. Leaders don't make excuses. In the military academies, I think it's worldwide, because they know that nothing makes a person weaker or littler than always making excuses. You just sound awful. You just sound incompetent. No leader could be a leader if all they did was make excuses. There is a turning point in your life where you become an adult or you remain a child. And it's like a line that you cross. You come up to this line, and on one side of the line, other side of the line is responsibility, where you are now responsible for the rest of your life. On this side of the line is blaming others for your problems. Blaming is the major source of negative emotions and unhappiness and stress and failure. Accepting responsibility is the major reason for happiness, personal power, and success. If you have a goal, you accept responsibility for achieving the goal. If you have a problem, you accept responsibility for solving the problem. But whatever happens, you don't blame other people. Blaming makes you weak and angry. Number 5, and this is the 5th quality of leaders, and again, this could be number 1, is excellence. Leaders set high standards. They set high standards. There's a famous story of Henry Kissinger when he was the Secretary of State, and he had thousands of people working for him, and one top executive brought him a report on a particular area of foreign policy. And the next day, he came back, and Kissinger said, "This report is not good enough. I need you to redo it." And he said, "Okay," and he took it away and worked on it for 2 days, and he brought it back. The next day, Kissinger called him in and said, "It's still not good enough. You've got to do this better." All right, he went back, and this time he spent 3 or 4 days, the whole rest of the week and the weekend. Finally, the following week, he brought it in. He said, "Sir," he said, "I cannot make this any better. This is the finest, the tightest, the most accurate report I could possibly do." And Kissinger said, "Okay, now I'll read it for the first time." And that is an interesting story because he demanded such high standards, and leaders work for excellence in products and services. They're constantly striving. They did a study recently, fastest growing small and medium-sized companies in America. These companies in 3 years had grown 10, 20, 50, 100 times in size and profits. What was the most important factor in the success of these businesses? All in very competitive fields, tremendous competition, and they started off with no money. They started off with every problem you could imagine. Number 1 was quality. Is the products and services they produced were recognized as being top quality. And the leaders of those companies were intensely focused on improving quality. So we call this continuous and never-ending improvement. Every day they're looking for ways to improve their products and services and the way that they take care of their customers. And sometimes one small change makes a tremendous difference. So, number 6 is communication. Leaders are good communicators.
There's an inextricable link between leadership and communication. Those who lead are the ones who can clearly talk about what they believe, and those who can clearly talk about what they believe are the ones who lead. Let's imagine that we're out on a tour, a 3-hour tour on a boat, and we get stranded on a desert island. Here we are, all stranded on the desert island. The question is, how will we get off the island? One of us stands up and says, "I will lead." We like that. We're social animals. We appreciate leadership. And he stands up and says, "Okay, who's got ideas? You think we should build a fire? I like it. Good." We were able to get through that forest together. That means that we can pick absolutely any direction on this island and we will be able to get there. That's called leadership. When people believe what you believe, they will work for you with blood and sweat and tears. When they don't believe what you believe, they work for your money. The goal is not to surround yourself with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to surround yourself with people who believe what you believe.
Now, the 7th quality of leadership is action. Many years ago at a talk, I was speaking to Rich DeVos when he was on his way up. Rich DeVos, the president of Amway, worth $5.3 billion today. He started off knocking on doors selling soap. And he was working his way up. And I asked him, I said, "What have you found? What's the most important quality of successful people?" And he said, "Brian," he said, "we found there's a direct relationship," I still remember him telling me this, "between how quickly a person takes action on a new idea and how likely it is they'll ever take action on any idea at all." And so the action orientation is the critical thing. We watch people, everybody hears the same things, they hear the same ideas, but then we watch and we see how quickly they take action. And if a person takes action quickly on a new idea, the chances are they're going to be successful go up by hundreds of percent.
And the most wonderful thing is that when you take action, is you get 3 benefits. The first benefit is that you get feedback, which enables you to self-correct. And all of life is a process of experimenting and feedback and changing and correcting. That's all of life. Second of all is you get ideas. There's something about acting that actually triggers your creativity. It makes you smarter. It activates more of your brain. Sitting there passively doesn't do anything, but taking action actually lights up your brain like a Christmas tree. And the third factor is that taking action gives you confidence. Your self-confidence goes up. Is the more actions you take in the direction of your goals, the more confidence you have, the more creative you are, the more energy you have, the happier you are. You feel like you're in control of your life. You feel powerful. And that is why the difference, the 80-20 rule that we've talked about, the top 20% of people in every society and business are proactive. They're constantly taking action. The bottom 80% are passive, is they're waiting for someone else to come and tell them what to do. And so since you are highly proactive, you're obviously in the top, probably the top 10% of your field. And the people in the top 10% are the ones who enjoy all the rewards. They're the ones that make all the money. They're the ones that make all the progress. Maybe not in the short term, but in the long term.